Welcome to the Better on Purpose podcast. This is the first episode. My guest, Kyle Ruggeri, is thanks for being the first guest ever on the podcast.
Let's go. Absolutely. Appreciate it.
I'm going to let Kyle introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his story.
Well, thank you. I've known Jake since sixth grade, seventh grade.
Yep.
And so I do content for addiction and recovery. My goal was to share the part of addiction and recovery that people don't talk about. So the nitty gritty, the in between. We hear a lot about somebody in active addiction. We hear a lot about somebody in recovery, and then often maybe a little bit of that week prior, week after period. Some documentaries follow it, but I wanted to talk about all the pieces that don't get discussed. What's somebody feeling month 4? What's somebody feeling month 6? What's going through somebody's mindset 1 minute after they get high? What's going through somebody's mindset 1 minute after they just stole out of their mom's purse? Like these parts that aren't discussed. And that's really where it started, and just kind of took off from there with social media, and started with a blog, took off with some social media, YouTube, and then...
Are you comfortable talking about why you got there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was a football injury really put me down the opioids route, but when I look back and analyze it, I had the, addict addiction tendencies way before. I mean, high school, you were involved in a minor part of just like we partied hard, but you had no idea what we were doing behind the scenes.
No.
Yeah. And I was buying extra everything that all my friends around me didn't even know about at all times. A couple did who were, have gone on in their own struggles, but so it just progressed, an injury in football, progressed with the opioid route. And then that was a big turning point too, because, as you know, and, people listening, I played football my whole life. All of a sudden in college, second year, I get my 5th concussion. I stopped playing by choice, but also my coaches in the NCAA all these new rules were in effect from, the Will Smith movie just came out. Concussions were a very big thing. So they were like, you have to sit out for a year. I was like, all right, I'm going to try to protect what brain cells I had left. And at that point, and now it was just, I had nothing but time. I lived at a house with 5 football players. I was in a lot of pain mentally and physically, and I just used drugs and alcohol to cope. And then it progressed wildly from there.
So now you're trying to help and give back, and it sounds like you are looking for your audience or whoever's watching your videos to relate, and hopefully more of a question, like what's the end result that you hope for when creating?
The end goal for me is, just like you said, relate, but that connection. It's when somebody sends an email, and, I've been blessed I have a whole Excel sheet of these. When I get an email from a mother saying, thank you for your videos, I now understand what my son was thinking at this point in time. And he's not a bad person that he stole out of my purse, but I know, at that moment he did a bad thing, of course, but he's struggling with a disease. And, or, somebody else, I read a comment the other day, it's just like your content's helped me get through the last 3 years of my recovery. Like that's the goal. That's the end goal.
So
for me.
Also families of, people struggling, because it sounds
100%.
like, that mother example is a good analogy in ways that anybody that knows somebody that may have.
Which nowadays is almost everyone, whether it's a cousin, friend, or even maybe, twice removed somehow, a friend of a friend, but fortunately it's everywhere.
One of the things I wanted to discuss today was sort of like there is the disease and there's addiction that takes recovery and everything that you went through. And there's a lot of people that live a similar lifestyle as people in recovery, but are in a completely different world.
Yeah.
And sober, I think the word sober is really what kind of confuses the whole thing because the definition and the way it's used in like AA may be different.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on like sober and, for instance, I'm Cali sober, we'll call it.
Yeah.
I didn't make that term up. Someone else did, and people use it. So is the word being misconstrued? Should there be a word just for recovering addicts or folks who had a disease that they, need to cure in a sense? Or is it okay to we just say sober if you don't drink? But it's more than just drinking, right? So talk about that.
That's a great question. I actually try to use recovery more than sober when I'm like doing content or videos, just because it encompasses more. But I think it's personal to the person too. Whatever somebody chooses to use is up to them. From like a 12-step perspective, AA, NA, which, I do attend a lot, their definition is pretty much stop using mind-altering substances, period. From a sober context. That also is a little confusing, and I totally don't agree. I don't totally agree with it because, like, we're still sucking down caffeine and nicotine, at the meetings, which are considered mind-altering substances. And then also, like, if you take medication, back in the day, it wasn't accepted at much in 12 steps. Now it is. So there's so many caveats and rules. And then to some people, like, for you, for example, you stopped drinking. That was something for your own personal choice. You stopped. That may have been something that you thought hindered your performance or your work or your life or anything. Another substance that you may choose to use doesn't, and that's okay. And that's still sober for you. And I look at it like I'm a nicotine user, and it's like I haven't quit nicotine yet. Am I considered not sober? No, it's just something I would like to quit. Hopefully I will, and I don't yet. And
so it's fair to say that we're sort of in the same boat.
Yeah.
Even though the stakes are much higher for you. I think that's really the difference between it is, a relapse for you may look, the worst comes worst, jail time.
Yeah.
You go down that path. And for the reasons that I stopped drinking are all health related. I see a ton of, my phone becomes my source of sort of like how you should be better in life. And I always research it deeper. And there's a lot of things I see that I see are completely false. So I understand that there's a ton of misinformation on social media. However, there's a lot out there that talks about how bad alcohol is for our brains, for our bodies, for our nervous system, for our heart, for everything. So the stakes may be just as high for me, though. Who knows? I may have a condition that, and this brings me to a whole other topic I want to talk about in wellness, but I could die from, heart disease or something. So the more we talk about it, I think it is sort of a similar situation, but it feels from my side that it isn't. And I feel like I'm almost disrespecting the other side of it because the stakes are so much higher that it's like, I say I don't drink, I'm sober, but Cali sober is a whole different story. And for those who don't know what it means, cannabis is my drug of choice, and nicotine as well.
Yeah.
But I've gone down a long path of trying to compensate for what I feel those two things, plus another prescription that is a stimulant that I think is altering my body severely. All three are addictions.
Yeah. I think you put it a great way. You said, and sometimes the stakes may be higher, but also depending on the substance, I think that has a lot to do with it because, for example, like in 12-step rooms, they'll talk about somebody who maybe was a high functioning, alcoholic versus somebody who was not. And it really makes no difference. It's what's going on internally and what the person chooses. And I bring that up to mean like, as a heroin, fentanyl, cocaine was, those three were my main drugs of choice. A relapse to me, I could die the first time. Like there's a good chance of that. Also, pretty quickly with those drugs. Within a day, 2 days, maybe a week, I'll be doing some not so good things for money, for, skipping work, whatever. With maybe, let's say, alcohol, you don't see people slide as quick. So it might be, in the end, if it's a problem for them, they're still going to get there, but it might be 6 months, a year.
That's a great point, because it's like a scale.
Exactly.
But everyone's treated the same in the sense of the stakes.
Yeah.
So for me, my stakes are probably the lowest. But considering there's still a scale, I shouldn't feel as bad about, giving myself a label of sober, or,
No.
because I have to have that conversation when I'm at a social function, or someone's like, can I get you a beer? It's awkward at times, and
Can be, yeah.
I'm sorry, bro, I don't drink anymore. They knew me and they knew I drank at one point, so I have to say anymore. And then it brings up a conversation. Well,
there's that
what
little
happened?
awkward, why?
Well, I saw you in between. Is there a problem? Like, you don't have a problem.
Did you do something?
But do I, like, what do they know to say that? But it is awkward, and I tell them the truth. And honestly, I use my son as the biggest example, which is the root, but I want to be the best father I can be. I know if I drink, I'm going to be hungover at times. And I know a lot of people probably have a challenge trying to be a good parent while hungover.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Plus, the odds of me dying earlier probably are higher if I continue to drink, and I would love to be here as long as I possibly can to be a good father to my son.
Yeah.
So all those thoughts start going through your head. You see all these Instagram posts about how poisonous it is for our bodies, and it's easy. So that's what I tell them, and then I start feeling like I'm preaching, don't drink, which I sort of am, because it's like, if you had a choice, which we all do, if you care about your health, because people are fitness freaks, and like my sister, if she doesn't get her run in that day, and she's a twig, she's off, and that's mental health stuff, and that's fine. But
I'm the same way.
She cares about her well-being, but she has no problem throwing back a bunch of IPAs. And I start to get judgmental, not actually to her, but I'm like, why, if she cared so much, why didn't she just stop drinking? Like, that's killing her. But then I think about myself, and I say, well, I still participate in nicotine and cannabis and the prescription. So it's like, I'm also just at fault. So it's I get it.
Exactly. And the other thing I would say to that too is, like, to that point, I know your sister, and she's younger than you. I think about too, when I see a friend struggling, and I'm like, I just want to shake them. And I'm like, if you do this one thing, like, it'll help your life. But then I think about how many people for years told me that, and I wasn't ready to hear it. So when I see somebody else, maybe even if it's a small thing, drinking, or not that that's a small thing, but you know what I mean? Like, for example, your sister doing that, where, like, if she's comfortable with it and it's not, affecting her life, that's
to each their own.
Exactly. And another point real quick, I was just thinking, you said, I'll never forget this. I was at a meeting one time. When I say meeting, I mean AA meeting, but, and there was two people who shared in this meeting, and one lady, breaking point, her moment was literally, she would have a drink every day at 5:00, and then she'd, drink pretty much till she went to bed. Everything on the outside, successful family life, career, all that, children. One day she started at 3:00, and her son made a comment, "Mommy, you're having your special drink at 3:00, huh?" That was it. That was enough for her. She quit that day and got involved in a program. The same meeting, there was a gentleman who did 5 prison terms and lived under a bridge, literally, for a period of time. And I just couldn't help but think, like, these two people are in here. Both of them felt an internal, I'd hit
epiphany.
A breaking point, epiphany, rock bottom, whatever people want to call it. And yet totally different, from external kind of circumstances and consequences, but it doesn't matter. To me, it's internal. Yeah. You chose for your son, and that's it, that you're sober. And, if you choose to say that. And
so let's talk about, like, the challenges now that it becomes, trying to live the same, if not similar life that you experience joy in. Because for me, drinking was a huge part of me being able to have a great time and let loose. Between concerts, weddings, anything that people drink at, I was always the life of the party. I got my pack. Now, like, my family gives me a little bit of a hard time because I'm not the same party animal fun Jake that I used to be when I did drink. And I do feel bad, and like, I shouldn't become lame now. Like, I have to learn to still enjoy life just as much. Right.
Yeah.
So it's conscious. It's on my head. So like, you do a really good job. And I see, like, in your stories and your posts on social, you're at a rave, and like, you're in wherever you were last, promoting that event
in France.
In France, you could still have a great time and be at a rave and not be on drugs. So how's it for you? And what have you learned that's been a good tool or method to, make the most out of it without drugs?
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I definitely 6.5 years into, recovery, sobriety, I still struggle with it because you said it perfectly. Don't want to be like, we've both drank together in the past and partied. We're both fun guys. We're not aggressive drunk. We're both fun, want to have fun. I definitely miss that part of it. And I miss the loosening up. I've caught myself being rigid in life, and I miss that 2-3 drinks, just loosening up. But I know for me, I can't, because to me, it always leads to worse stuff. But how I've found to kind of compensate or cope with that is just find and do the things you love doing, and also finding others that can do it without that if need be. I still have the family parties and stuff where people are having a couple drinks and try to make it fun. Let's do some fun things that, maybe not beer pong this time, but let's play some type of card game that doesn't involve drinking. You guys can still drink during it, but we can all have fun.
Yeah.
Or, for example, in France, that was an ironic thing too, because it was this giant alleyway, and on the outside were all these restaurants where all the, quote, adults were drinking. In the middle was this giant rave type scene. It was almost exclusively 20 and under. So it was almost all kids, like 16, 17, 18.
That is ironic.
It was so weird. They were all stone sober. I mean, at least the ones I talked to and the ones I was around. But yet they said they do this every weekend, and I had a blast there with them.
It's not ironic. It's coincidental.
Yeah.
Irony in saying things are ironic, is the most misused word in the English dictionary.
Really?
Everyone confuses coincidences with irony and saying that's ironic. Yeah. But irony is only in things that are associated with something negative.
Oh, it really is only negative?
Like the song, isn't it ironic? All those things are bad things. Raining on your wedding day.
Yep. Hit the lotto, die the next day.
Yes.
Yep.
Isn't it ironic?
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
I catch people all the time. So this might be like the tip of the show.
This is my waking moment of knowing
ironic.
About ironic.
And like for a second, I thought you were right because you were talking about it being 20 and under. I thought the story was, it ended up being a coincidence that everyone there was also sober.
Yeah. But not really because something happened. It's just they were underage.
Right.
Yes, but I mean, to the question is like, my biggest fear before I got sober was I thought I have to get sober because I didn't want my parents to bury a child. I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want my family to have to. I personally, at that point, didn't care a ton about my own life, but I didn't want my family to have to go through that. So I thought I'll get sober because for them. But I assumed like my life is going to suck. It's just going to be boring and miserable. And it'll be boring and miserable. And that's just how it's going to be. But I'll do that sacrifice for them. One of the other things I kind of found out during was, sure, there's some nights where like I'm the first one at the restaurant, and I'm sitting there at a bar awkwardly having a glass of water waiting for my family to show up, where I know if I had a drink or two, I'd be more loose with the people at the bar having fun. But that's 1 out of 10. There's 9 out of 10 times where I thought in the past I was having fun at the football game with my friends, when in reality, I'm slurring my words, I'm half blacked out, I'm running to the bathroom to use other substances, didn't really appreciate any part of life. There was fun in the beginning, and then it turned into desperation. So, now being sober at a Bills game, for example, I actually watch the game, enjoy it, talk to the person next to me, have fun. And there's nothing against the people that are having some drinks, but the way I drank in the past, I wasn't enjoying that game. I was enjoying the alcohol, and that's it, and getting rowdy.
The Bills game so 2024 playoffs, Chiefs at missed field goal. That was 2 or 3 months into being sober.
Yeah.
And it was the first real big event where traditionally I would drink a lot, tailgate, you're outside, it's freezing cold.
Yeah.
We get there 4 or 5 hours before the game. We're standing outside in the freezing cold, and this was a freezing cold day. And I got to figure out how I'm going to get through this.
It's a big test.
It is a big test. And what I realized is the one thing that I guess I underappreciated it at the time, what the booze actually did for me in those situations was calm my anxiety for the actual football game.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Because
you're
playoff,
a huge fan.
Exactly.
For those that don't know.
Yeah.
Huge Bills fan.
Right. So being stone cold sober at the game, watching this specific game, my anxiety was out of this roof. And not to mention where we parked was the absolute last place someone like me would ever park, but we were meeting somebody there and they got there first. So we had to go where they went, or else, as you know, if you don't park in the same lot, you have to leave your vehicle. I wanted to buy my vehicle. They park behind this establishment, which has 1 in, 1 out exit, and it's a huge lot, and there's probably 1,000 cars there. And I'm thinking to myself, if we lose this fucking game and I have to sit in that parking lot and wait to get out of this lot for 2 hours, I'm going to go insane.
How'd it play out?
Because I know that if they win, I don't give a shit if I'm sitting in a vehicle. We're going to the conference championship.
You don't care what's happening.
But we lost, and I had a lot of anxiety, and we had to walk back through a literal... This was after the blizzard in Buffalo where there was 8 feet of snow, and we parked across a ravine, so we had to literally hike down this giant hill. If you didn't have traction on your shoes, you slid down the whole thing through the woods, up. The snow is so high, the fences that are the perimeter of the parking lots, the snow is above that. So normally...
That's probably where they push all of it to plow,
They dump it right over the fence. Normally, this route you can't take because you can't get then over the fence. You'd have to go all the way to the road and come back around. But because of the snow, we could just jump over into the lot way quicker. So everyone was going that way. It was a hike, and it was a lot of fun. And, one of my first sober experiences where I traditionally would be very high and enjoy it. And my drunkenness wasn't ever disruptive or destructive, or I would get annoying and such, but there wasn't a risk of me hurting myself or doing anything dumb per se. It's all just the internal health that I'm paranoid that it's doing to me.
Do you notice now, one of the big things I notice is when I'm around people drinking heavily or partying, there gets to a point, I don't want to say quickly, but usually 2 hour mark where I'm kind of tapped. Just seeing, especially if people are really hitting it, where I don't want to be around anymore.
Somebody, the bar owner in town, once said, nothing good happens after 12 o'clock. His bar's never open. We're always closing at midnight. Yeah. Between 12 and 2, what good can happen? And
very true.
It sounds like similar to what you're describing is the stamina of someone who doesn't have performance enhancing substances is around 11 o'clock. We need to go to bed, rest. That's what our bodies need. And when you're drinking, you can go all night because you have performance enhancing substances in your body. So yes, I do see that a lot where, okay, these people are still on the incline and I'm just about hitting my climax, which is completely normal. And I accept and am more than happy bailing out of places.
Yeah.
It's very tough for my wife because when we go to weddings, you know, and
got to compromise and stay later. But
yeah.
I'm even talking more though, too, like, and this definitely is a judgmental statement, but being annoyed. Like we've had some situations in the past, year or so with some friends
by
of ours.
Behavior in like, or just the fact that they're still going.
No, but behavior,
of course,
because I'm stone sober, and in the past where I'd be,
our lens is way different.
Exactly.
So the foolery, the foolishness in the just erroneous behavior is just so enhanced.
Exactly. That was a great way to put it. Our lens is not changed. It's the same it was earlier in the evening. Just, and it just gets
changed from when we used to be in that same condition as them. Our lens is way different.
Yeah.
When you're interacting with extremely drunk people and you are drunk, everything seems normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I also feel like I could be a little bit more blunt then, because it's just something I wanted to mention. The one thing that bothers me is not getting the pass I used to get when I was drunk. Meaning, so I was at a bar with a couple friends like 2 or 3 years ago, and somebody was like, yo, you won't get on the table and dance. I am stone sober. I said, sure, I will. Just being me. And I got on the table and danced, and I heard these couple girls laughing like, wow, he must be hammered to get up there and dance. And then I get down and I'm talking with them and a friend, and the friend's like, he's the only sober one here, like stone sober. And it was almost like they looked at me like I was crazy for doing that, versus if I was drunk, it's like, oh, it's acceptable. You could be an idiot.
So I didn't, you don't get the same pass?
Yeah.
So pass as in like, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And back to like the being annoyed a little bit, the specific example I'm talking about, we were with a bunch of buddies of ours, and a good buddy, I'm not going to say the name, but just, grabs you, big headlock. I love you. And that's great. And the first 5 times I said, I love you back, bro. I'm so glad to see you. The 9th and 10th time of kind of drooling on me, saying I love you, grabbing me in a headlock at midnight. If I was drunk, I would have been like, dude, all right, it's enough. Get off me. Come on now. What the hell?
Right.
But because I'm sober and like I'm trying to be empathetic and have more of a conscious.
Now you're that asshole guy, that sober guy who's a dick and can't put up with the drunks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're high or drunk, it's like, oh.
Yeah, you get a pass.
Hey, dude, stop being a jackass. Get off me.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, the pass, I called it a little bit. So, but, it is what it is. The way I look at a lot of these things is it's like, for me, it's probably isn't as true for you. I caused a ton of damage and destruction in addiction. And getting sober, it's like I've accepted that, some people don't follow this route, but it's pretty mainstream now. Addiction is a disease. It changes your brain. So if I had diabetes and I couldn't eat certain things, I would accept that. If I had Parkinson's, cancer, I had to take certain meds. I have addiction. I have it, so I can't, drink or drug safely. It just doesn't work for me. And it's like, okay, now there's going to be a couple consequences of that, but I'll accept it.
But I think that brings it back to what I was saying earlier about how I feel different about choosing not to drink because I don't have the disease that you have. The stakes are a little bit, so I feel like I don't want to like talk about it. Like, I don't know. It's just, it puts me in a weird position, and I don't know how to treat it or like how to act around people that have a disease.
Yeah.
And I don't, but we align on so many different levels, right? And it's like, but I don't want to feel like I am just as not important, but like my situation has any merit or is valid when you have a disease, and I just am choosing because I want to, right? It's like, I have to.
Good point.
You can. You don't have to. So like, F you, I have a struggle. You just chose to be this way.
That is a good point. I mean, again, no one is any less valuable than anyone, so your choice is as valuable as anybody else's. But that is true to where if you have a drink with your family, you choose to have a drink, and that's the end of it. Where I'm not guaranteeing if I had one drink, I'd be out on the streets doing heroin again, but typically that is the progression. And I've not, when I've tested it twice in the beginning, it led to that. So
in the whole battle I have is like, I want to be the best version of myself. And maybe that is once in a while, a couple times a year, actually letting loose, right?
Yeah.
How much damage am I actually doing if I drank 4 times a year, right? But I feel like I'm cheating the whole thing if like I'm trying to live this lifestyle, and especially disrespecting, mostly I feel like I'm disrespecting people with the disease where I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to be this, sober guy who lives this great lifestyle, but I also want to have a drink when I really, really want to have a drink. That just seems wrong, but I have to convince myself otherwise because I know, like that situation in Florida with my father, like it meant something to him that for me, I would do that for him. Yeah. It doesn't really mean anything to him in the sense of having a drink. We could have watched a hockey game together, doing something together, but the culture, you get together, you have a cocktail, you let loose, you talk shit. And he misses that. He doesn't understand a lot of things either, given his age and everything else. He's a very successful radio show host, so I don't know what I'm doing saying he doesn't understand, but
he does. I feel like your dad maybe is, from what I know of him too, just hearing him at 8 a.m. on a random day, he's such an open, loose person to begin with.
Yeah.
Very, we'll break balls, have fun at 7 a.m. stone sober because he's done that so long where it may come a little bit more uncomfortable to us. That is a great perspective and back and forth to have. I guess if you maybe were to say, like, I've been sober 3 years, like continuous years, and you didn't, like you had drinks every 4 months, maybe that's an internal battle between you, but I also don't think you have anyone to justify it to. You could say I'm sober, and yet twice a year I kind of let loose a little bit.
Right. And the thing is, I don't even say I'm sober. I just say I don't drink.
Yeah.
And which I don't. So, but you understand where I'm coming from. And I think that's really like the main thing
the internal battle
I'm trying to illustrate. Because there's 2 events coming up this year that I feel like I'm going to Cancun for a wedding with Bianca. One of her best friends is getting married. A lot of her friends, I'll know 1 or 2 guys. Both are extremely fun. Actually, it's just one guy. The other guy's not going anymore. Extremely fun party guy.
Yeah.
4 days in Cancun at an all-inclusive resort. It seems like, we chose the swim-up pool, and like I'm with my wife, who we have not. Our son turns 2 in a week. Have not gone away together since he's been born, and it will be our first vacation together without him. And I just know I'm a very uptight person, and like, I'm very judgmental, and I get very like, when people are annoying or acting stupid, or like, I just quickly,
you seclude.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to be surrounded by these fools. And like, I almost need to put that lens on to not get like that and not be judgmental and not give a shit if they're acting like fools, just for the sake of spending all this money to go on this vacation and just be that dude who's just a dick and like, who invited this guy? Like, I should be able to do that without drinking, and I know I can, but
that is funny though too, because people won't give you the pass they'll give me in that same situation. If I turn down that vacation or say I was going to that specific wedding, it's almost like everyone in my life, and for those listening may not know too, like I went to prison over my addiction, so like everyone knows about it, will Kyle left the wedding 2 hours ago without saying bye. No one really questions it. They're like, oh, he probably felt uncomfortable, so he left. But you do that, there's kind of not an excuse where like, oh, Jake's being a dick today. Like, why'd Jake leave?
To be clear, I more recently, since having a child and everything else, like I do kind of set a tone. Yeah, that I like
boundary.
Yeah, I'm not the partier anymore. It's not it's not just not drinking. Like I just and I feel bad. One, for myself for not wanting to have as much fun as I used to, and two, for my wife and family who hear me complain a lot about stuff and like whatever. Like it's not easy to like stomach sometimes, and I'm consciously working on it. Like we're not all drunk all the time, so it's like my issues aren't just because I'm not drinking. It's because it's just who I am, and we all have our own things. So like. What I've realized though is personal. Not drinking kind of amplifies that sort of like cynicalness, or what's the word? Cynical. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, that's, I very often think about alcohol in general being the social lubricant and the coping mechanism of our society. I mean, we both grew up with families and parents. Like, I'm pretty sure yours did it to some extent. Like, my dad, my mom have a glass of wine at dinner every night. They'll have, now no problem with it. They have one, maybe two, but like that calms them down a little bit. A stressful day at work, we relax, and so much of our society does it that without it, you really have to face your problems head on, where you don't get to kind of, I do miss being able to be like, shit, this was a shitty week. I want to have 5 or 6 beers. Yeah, exactly.
I need a drink tonight.
I need a drink. I need to go out with the boys and just let loose for a night for, kind of restart my month, restart my week, so-and-so. It sucks a little bit. You got to feel your feelings and emotions fully.
100%.
The other thing I was going to ask is, you mentioned earlier you still use cannabis. Could you go to that wedding and maybe up the cannabis? Does that help at all, make you loosen up or party at all, or the opposite?
Yes
effect?
And no. Loosen up a little, then the anxiety kicks in. And I'm like, and I get spatial anxiety.
Okay.
If like I go to a concert or like I'm walking out of an event and there's a lot of people around me, or like, and I just feel, I get weirded out, I have to escape. No, and then I'll just get burnt out and like weird. Like when I get too high, I'm just like, no one wants to talk to me. I'm a fool. It takes me forever to like tell a story, and they're like, it's Snoozerville.
Yeah. Especially for a bunch of drunk people.
It's been real. It's been real fun. Thanks for checking in on the first episode of the Better on Purpose podcast, brought to you by Jake Levin, aka Satchel Levin, aka Satch Money,
aka Captivate Media.
The camera just.
Oh. Hey.